Hello again, everybody. It's your old pal, Guardian Enzo, coming to you as usual live on tape from Kyoto, Japan, where spring has sprung. It's nice and warm. And spring, of course, is the season when a young man's fancy turns to anime, or maybe not so young. But it is springtime, and spring is usually one of anime's two big seasons, along with fall. We'll see if that's the case this year. As usual, we're getting into a nice routine with these now. I've done several of these video versions. The video version will have more depth on a few specific series, and the website version will be more breadth. That'll cover more shows. I think that's the best way to do it. I'll of course put a link to the post on the website in the description below. And spring this year is spring and fall, as I say, are usually the big seasons for anime, and both in terms of quality and quantity, or at least often it's spring or fall. Usually it's spring or fall. Spring more than fall, even, I would say. Spring doesn't look barren by any stretch this year, but one thing I will say is, judging by how many really big titles we know have been greenlit, it's kind of striking that there aren't more of them in spring. In addition to all the ones we already know, even recently we've heard Dungeon Meshi getting greenlit, Freyren being greenlit, not officially announced, but greenlit. Witch Hat, but then the ones we even know that have been officially announced, then more Vinland Saga, more Made in Abyss, more Mob Psycho, more Golden Kamui. Got the Biscuit Hammer, Hoshino Samidari adaptation. So it's new Kenshin too. So there's a lot of big dogs out there, but not too many of them are hunting in spring. There's really only one series this spring that I would consider to be a really, really big time title, and then there are a couple more that I'm excited about that may not necessarily be big time in terms of general expectations, but that's okay. Whereas the rest of those shows, I'm suspecting some of them will probably end up carrying over into 2023 before they premiere at this point. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens to Vinland Saga. That's my growing suspicion. I wouldn't be surprised with Mob Psycho. I do think we'll probably see the new season of Made in Abyss this year, but we'll see. And we know Samidara is coming in summer, for example. So we'll see. For spring, though, let's get into that. Spring has 49 shows by my count on the schedule, which is about an average size for spring. In the last couple of years, there were several years in the mid 2010s where it was considerably higher, but even 49 is still above the capacity of the industry to handle, based on the black company conditions that exist across most of the studios, unfortunately. Almost unerringly, it's amazing how it happens season after season without me setting out to do it. I almost unerringly end up previewing a third, or almost exactly a third of the series on the schedule. That's how many interest me enough. And this season, exactly the same, 16 out of 49. So there you go. As always, on my website version, on the print version of this, I always split up into 3 tiers, which are highest expectations. And there have been seasons where we've had 0 shows in the highest expectations category. So we have 3 this time. So credit where it's due. The mid-tier, mid-table category, which has 5 this time. And then, as is often the case, the modestly interested, the big dump, is usually about half. And it is indeed exactly half this time, 8 out of 16. And we will be touching on OVA and theatrical stuff as well. But without further ado, let's jump right into the previews. And I can't possibly begin anywhere else except Spy Family. The X is silent, as it is with Hunter x Hunter. which I didn't know for a long time, so I was pronouncing it Spy X Family. You'd think the Hunter X Hunter fiasco would have taught me, but there you go. Spy Family. You've heard me talk about this on the channel before in my video podcast with Samu. We talked about it, and the Kimetsu video as well, because this is one of the two series, along with Chainsaw Man, which I think have a chance to be the next big, really, really big thing in anime. And when I say really big, I'm talking Tokyo Revengers big. I'm talking Jujutsu Kaisen big. More likely Tokyo Revengers than Jujutsu Kaisen. But the big money, the smart money, is probably on Chainsaw Man, which is, I understand it. It's a weekly Shonen Jump series. It's got the biggest buzz. But I would not be shocked to see Spy Family pip it and take that crown. It may happen, it may not. But Spy Family is more mainstream in the sense, I think, that it's not quite as brutally dark and existentially violent and dismal as Chainsaw Man is. It may be a little too highbrow, a little too brackets intellectual to really, really hit huge in the mainstream, but then again, it may not. It has one particular secret weapon, which is the character Anya, which is the little girl in the series, who I think has really helped it to appeal to more demographics than it might otherwise have appealed to, especially young children, especially young girls. I think it's a series that maybe adults would have gravitated towards more than younger kids, but I think Anya has really bridged that. And it may be kind of like a Goldilocks series of just hitting that just right balance. It's interesting, too, of course, because Spy Family is written and drawn by Endo Tatsuya, who is one of the former assistants to Fujimoto Tatsuki, who is, of course, the author of Chainsaw Man. And he has another assistant who's writing a manga called Dandadan, which is currently in the process of being one of the buzziest titles of the last year. Will almost certainly get an anime in the next 18 months, and I think has a chance to be pretty darn big. So his Fujimoto's family tree is expanding in the manga world. Spy Family is Truth in Advertising. It's the story of a spy family, basically a family of sleeper agents who are undercover. And it's the father, the mother, the daughter, an interesting cast of supporting characters. I've read some of the manga, and I think it's quite good. I'm not in a position to be an authoritative on whether it's great or not. It didn't strike me as great. The parts I've read, just very good. But a lot of people do think it's great, so I'm going to say full credit to them. I have no reason to doubt it. I'll make up my own mind as I watch it. I've only really, like I said, I've only browsed the manga, but I can see why it has the appeal it does. It's definitely a water cooler series, and I think you're going to see it develop it that way. That's why I think it has a chance to be the stealth bomber here. I think it has a chance to be the surprise major hit. We'll see. It also has going for it that it has the great Furuhashi. It has the great Furuhashi Kazuhiro directing, of course, of Dororo and Rurouni Kenshin fame. And it's being co-produced by WIT, which doesn't hurt. WIT along with Cloverworks. If you look at the staff lists, you would get the impression that WIT is kind of driving the ship here. So it's in good hands. I don't see any reason to think this isn't going to be at least a hit. The question is really, how big a hit is it going to be? The next series on the list for me is Ashi, which is probably not going to be the number 2 expectation series for a lot of people, but it is for me because I love sports manga and I love sports anime. And for me, it's been probably since Ginga E Kickoff, which is going on like 7 years since that ended, since we've seen, maybe even more now, actually, since we've seen a really great sports anime. And that's too long for anime to go without a great sports series. I'm hoping Awashi can bridge that gap. For me, there's like a great triumvirate of blue soccer anime. In addition to Awashi, you have B Blues and you have Blue Lock. And Blue Lock has an adaptation coming up later this year, too. B Blues, tragically, I'm thinking we'll never get one at this point. But there's a continuum, I guess, where B Blues is super traditional in sports manga terms. I call it the major of soccer. Blue Lock is the most modern, the most kind of energy drink, most clever, tricksy one. That's it. If you imagine sports manga and Shingeki no Kyojin had a love child, that's kind of Blue Lock. And Awash is in the middle. It's pretty traditional, but it still has a modern flair to it. It has won numerous awards, been nominated for the Manga Taisho. It's a very good seller. It's really good. It's really good. If you put a gun to my head, I'd probably pick Big B Blues over it because I'm just such a traditionalist that I love what B Blues does. But Awashi also is really good, and it's being done by Production IG, which is, that's pretty much a guarantor of a certain base level of production value that you're going to get. They're only the studio that did the best produced sports anime of all time in Haikyuu. I don't expect Awashi is going to be that level, either in terms of production values or in terms of popularity, but I do think it's going to be really good production values, and I think it's going to be quite popular based on the popularity of the manga. At least that's my hope. In terms of the story itself, it's a fairly traditional sports manga story. There's a kid, his name is Ashito Aoi, the title character basically, who is a middle schooler, and has an incident occur in his last year of middle school that kind of derails his dreams, and he has to sort of do an end run around fate to try to make them come true. And it's the classic sports manga journey, much of it taking place in high school. I would assume all of the anime probably, other than the introductory arc. How long will it be? I don't know, but it is going to be an NHK series. So NHK typically does not do one-core adaptations, much less sports manga. So I think it's safe to say we'll probably get 2 cores of Awashi. And then after that, we'll see. So for me, that's my number 2 expectation show of the year. Probably not, like I say, for most people, but for me, that's the number 2 show on my list behind Spy Family. Next up, about as close to a sure thing I think as you're ever going to see. That's Kingdom Season 4. This is, along with Tiger and Bunny 2, these are really the only 2 sequels I'm following this season, which is a very low number historically for me. There are other big name sequels going on out there, but I'm not really going to be into them. Kingdom, I don't have a lot original to say about Kingdom at this point. The 3rd season was, in my view, probably the best on balance. Certainly it had the best production values. It shifted over to the new Pierrot sub-studio Signpost, although by the time we got to the 3rd season, most of the really nightmarish production stuff was behind us. It's still not lavish, but it's good enough considering how good the writing is. The production values are not good enough that they're not a hindrance. It's a really, really brilliantly written series by Yasuhisa Hara. It's been 15 years going. It's one of the most popular manga in the world. There's a reason for that. I don't have any reason to think the 4th season won't be on par with the 3rd season, which was probably the best, but broadly of a vein with the first 2. This will probably be 2 cores as well. We don't know for sure, but that would be my expectation. And that is the highest expectations category for Spring 22. That takes us to the mid-table. There's 5 shows in here. These are worthwhile enough that I'll touch on all of them here. Summertime Render is the first one. Summertime Render is a finished manga, 13 volumes. It's getting 25 episodes, which is tight, but it can be done. It's the story of a young orphan who's living with a family with 2 sisters. One of them dies in mysterious circumstances, and as an adult, he returns to try to get to the bottom of this mystery. There may be some supernatural elements to this. I have not read the manga. It's pretty well regarded. I have not read it. The main reason Summertime Render is the first show I talk about in mid-table this time is because the director is Watanabe Ayumu, who is, he is one of the foremost directors in both theatrical and TV anime. So he's a big name. And he, there's only so much a director can do with an adapted work, as Comey would tell us. He made it look great, but he couldn't paper over all of the problems with that series narratively. But I have no reason to think Summertime Render isn't well enough written that Watanabe can go to school on it. And also the previews have looked, fantastic. It's OLM. You don't necessarily know that they're going to be a fantastic looking studio in terms of production, but they certainly have that in them. With Watanabe directing and the previews being as fantastic as they have been, my expectations for Summertime Render are pretty high. I'm going to be disappointed if this is not, certainly a top 20 show at the end of the year with the potential to bust into the top 10, depending on a lot of factors. Next would be Kotarou wa Hitorigurashi, which, as you may have seen, I've already started doing review posts on because Netflix dumped the entire show on the 10th of March. And it's great. Spoiler, it's great. Some of you will have already watched the whole thing by the time this preview is out, but on the assumption that some of you are not aware of it, which usually seems to be the case with Netflix, I'm including it in the preview anyway, even though technically I should probably call it a winter series, because I want people to watch it because it's really, really good. It's the story of a 4-year-old who moves into an apartment by himself. Yeah, I know. And the interactions he has with his neighbors, and it's really cute and very bittersweet, and plenty of bitter to make sure it never gets saccharine. It's really a great slice of life with a lot of pathos to it. And I know Netflix tends to get manga kind of Siberia-ized when it comes to anime fans because they don't get distributed in the normal channels. At least this one was distributed worldwide on the same day instead of having to wait a season as Netflix has been known to do. I don't binge watch series typically, Netflix or otherwise, Amazon Prime, whatever the case may be, and that includes anime. That's just not how I like to consume series. If I really like it, I like to kind of spread it out. And so I'm going to take a few weeks to watch Kotarou just like I did with Orbital Children. But I do think it's encouraging that for me, so far, the two best new series of 2022 have both been Netflix series, which is Orbital Children and Kotarou. They're both great. And I do think it's a sign that Netflix is really starting to figure this out. And they're giving what I was hoping they were going to be doing, which is giving a venue for other types of anime that aren't being generally made through the production committee system. So bravo to that. But like I said, it's already premiered and some of you already have seen it. We have a little, if there's a bubble genre this season, it's probably rom-com or at least comedy. None of them look like lights out slam dunk hits to me, but the most interesting among them is Kawai Dake Janai Shikimori-san. Doga Kobo, same studio and the same director, the same writer as Senpai ga Uzai, My Senpai is Annoying, which was a rom-com that I really liked. And I have a suspicion that this series is going to be pretty good. My expectations levels are about the same level as My Senpai is Annoying. If we get there, I'll be satisfied. It's the story of a very kind of quiet and unassuming boy with a super cute girlfriend who transforms when she gets worked up. That sounds like it's fraught with danger, but I don't get the sense that this is a mean-spirited herbivore boyfriend, carnivore girlfriend kind of a premise. I think it's more sweet. At least that's my hope. So among the rom-com this season, Kawai Dake Janai Shikimori-san, that would be my number one pick. Again, if nothing else, I tend to like Doga Kobo. I tend to like their style, and the same writer director as Senpai. That's a positive for me. And the manga seems to be pretty well liked, so I have high hopes for that. An interesting sequel is Tiger and Bunny 2 by Sunrise, which I refuse to call Bandai Namco Pictures. Another Netflix one, although this one is being released more along the lines of during the traditional start of the anime season. This is going to be 2 cours as well, like Great Pretender was. So I'm imagining Netflix will probably release it in chunks, as they did with Great Pretender, but what the hell do I know? Um, Tiger and Bunny was a show I really liked. I did not like the finale. I did not like the final arc. I did not like the ending, but for the most part, I really liked the show. But you know what? That was 10 years ago. The show was a massive hit, and especially at Comiket. And they dicked around for too long with recap movies and semi-sequels that weren't really sequels. And Tiger and Bunny 2 really should have been made around 2013, in my opinion. Will it still be a big commercial? Does Tiger and Bunny still have legs commercially in 2022? I don't know. Maybe. There certainly was nothing in the whole superhero genre. It was rife for a sequel. Why it took this long, I don't know. It has the same writer as Tiger and Bunny, so that could be good. And of course, it has Hirata Hiroaki as Kotetsu Kaburagi, one of the 2 leads, and he's one of the best seiyuu in the business as far as I'm concerned. Doesn't play lead characters as often now as he did when the first season came out, so that's always exciting, a chance to hear that. So, Tiger and Bunny 2, I'll certainly follow it. I have no reason to suspect it won't be quite good. I just think an opportunity was missed here by not releasing this sequel when the buzz for this series was really strong. Maybe it'll surprise me and do really well now. Who knows? Not my expectation, but hey, I'm wrong all the time. And with that, we graduate out of the mid-table and go on to the modestly interested category, which, as I said, is normally about half of the preview, and this season is half, 8 out of 16 shows. Couple more rom-coms here. A little trio of sports series, all originals. Love All Play, another badminton series. So 2 seasons in a row with a badminton series, but I think we're just building up to Blue Box out in Oaxaca. But that's probably another 18 months off yet. And then Birdie Wing, the golf girl story, another Sunrise series. What's interesting to me about Birdie Wing, it looks kind of silly, honestly, judging by the previews, but golf has not had an anime in like 30 or 40 years. And there are a couple of popular golf manga like King Golf, but golf is massively popular in Japan, but not with the right demographic for anime, I suppose, which is why we've gone so long without getting any golf anime. So maybe this will be interesting. Lastly, there is Gunjou no Fanfare, which is horse racing or a series about jockeys. 3 young boys, 15-year-old boys, or 3 or 4, 3 15-year-old boys at a prestigious horse racing academy. If there has ever been an anime about jockeys, I am not aware of it. So at least it has that going for it. Then, like I said, a couple more rom-coms. Aharen-san wa Hakarenai, which is about a girl with personal space issues, I guess you could say, and then her a tiny girl and a big guy with a big imagination who becomes her unlikely friend. It has a good staff with the same director as Kotarou wa Hitorigurashi, actually, and Yamamoto Souichirou, who's another good director, co-directing it. I have a little sleeper vibe on Aharen, which could be totally wrong, but that's one of the couple of shows this season which kind of has a sleeper vibe for me. And then a couple of cuckoos, Kakkou no Iinazuke, which I don't know. I don't get the sense that the manga is particularly regarded as any kind of a classic. It's a switch-set birth story about a boy and a girl, and the girl is raised by the boy's birth parents, and they decide that the two of them should get married. It all sounds rather strange to me, but the director of it is Akagi Hiroaki, who directed one of my favorite anime comedies of the last half decade, Karakai Jouzu no Takagi-san. So that's the reason why that kind of gets a stab in the dark for me. Deaimon, a Kyoto anime about a young man who goes home to take over his family's Kyoto traditional sweet shop, only to find out that they've promised it to a young girl who they're declaring is the family heir. And then another series by Yamamoto Souichirou, Kunoichi Tsubaki no Mune no Uchi, which is about a young ninja girl who's forbidden from having any contact with boys but becomes utterly fascinated with them because she's a teenager. I guess the rule in anime is all of Yamamoto's series should get adapted. This one is, and then he has another one coming out in the summer. So by that summer, all of his original series will have gotten anime adaptations. Karakai Jouzu Takagi-san does not have the Moto Takagi, which is the time skip version, is not a Yamamoto series. He is only an advisor on that, so I don't count that. All of Yamamoto's series, the ones he actually writes and draws, will have been adapted by summer. Generally speaking, I think if you talk to his fans, I would say that this series probably is held in the least regard of his three. But I'll give it a shot. I think he's a good writer. I do think that the Karakai Jouzu anime, partly because of Akagi directing it, has it exceeded the manga in every way. But I do think it's a very good manga. I like the manga a lot. So I'll give this a shot. We'll see. And that's it for seasonal anime. Now we also have my sleepers. What are my sleepers this season? Well, I would say Kawai Dake Janai Shikimori-san, although that may not be obscure enough to be a sleeper. That has a little bit of buzz. And then, as I say, Aharen-san is the other one I would say maybe is a little bit of a semi-sleeper buzz for me. On the OVA side, we actually have one. Seems like the trend of late has been nothing has made this category, but we actually have an OVA, and not only is it an OVA, it's not a special episode of a TV series. It's an actual original video animation, which is what OVAs used to be in the days of, Fooly Cooly and such. This is called Bubble. It's directed by Araki Tetsuro and written by Urobuchi Gen. So that's an interesting combo platter right there. And it's post-apocalyptic sci-fi. We'll see, but it's a single episode original animation with an interesting director and writer. So, hey, I think that's really healthy. However it turns out, it's been so long since we've gotten an OVA that actually was what OVA used to be that I'm excited to see it. So there you go. OVA makes a comeback. Then we have the theatrical category, which, unlike TV anime, tends to peak in summertime for obvious reasons. We have some interesting theatrical stuff, though. There's a couple of films here I'm going to be looking at. We have The Odd Taxi, In the Woods, which is probably... I don't know what percentage of it is going to be recycled. It's a quote-unquote retelling of the TV series. So I don't know how much of it is going to be actual new material, but some of it will be. Odd Taxi was definitely one of the surprise breakout hits of 2021. I really liked it. I don't think it's quite as spectacular as some make it out to be, but I do think it's really good. And I think it was marketed in an absolutely brilliant way from start to finish. The marketing campaign for this series has been really high level. And I actually was expecting it to get a second season, in fact, based on the video sales it generated. It would have been difficult to do a second season based on the central premise of the main character seeing everyone as animals. We got an explanation for that. So I don't know how you would work through that in a full second season, and we'll see how they work through that in the movie. But maybe it will get a second season at some point. I'd certainly enjoy that. Then we have Recycle of the Penguindrum, It's part of the decade celebration for Ikuhara Kunihiko's Mawaru Penguindrum, which was an annoyingly inconsistent and erratic and sometimes freakishly brilliant series. So pretty much summing up the Ikuhara experience right there. It's getting 2 movies, and this is often the case when they do movie adaptations of TV anime. The first one is a recap movie, then the second one gives you original material. It's cynical, it's a way to maximize cash. I get it, I don't love it. But the recycle movie coming out at the end of April is going to be the basically a rehash of the TV series, and then maybe with a little bit of original material to set up the second movie, which I believe is coming in the summer. So that'll be the one that's of more interest there. And last we have Inu-Ou, which is directed by Yuasa Masaki at Science Saru, which is interesting because he, of course, left Science Saru, the studio he founded. He was president. He left ostensibly to focus on direction, but also perhaps because he wasn't happy with the way Saru was seemingly turning into a black company. And hopefully it doesn't go full MAPPA, but there's definitely been some growing pains there that it's still experiencing. The other, of course, big reason Inu-Ou is interesting is because it's the second Heiki Monogatari project that Science Saru has done in the last 6 months, the first being their quote-unquote adaptation of Heiki Monogatari. I personally, I get why people like that. As someone who adores the book beyond all reason, I cannot embrace that as an adaptation because it so bastardizes the material, both in terms of the massive cuts and the anime original material, which to me is grossly inferior to the source material. This Inu-Ou is really, if they didn't have the budget and the time to do a real adaptation, Inu-Ou is, to me, the direction you should go, which is an original story inspired by, which is, Inu-Ou is an original story inspired by Heiki Monogatari. So, and it's a story of a very deformed boy who's kind of shunned. Then it's discovered he has a great talent for dancing, and he teams up with a Biwahoshi, the blind storyteller monk, a young boy who's a apprentice Biwahoshi, and they end up teaming up, and they're combining their talents as storytellers. It sounds really, really interesting. The previews are lights out, fantastic, stunning. I have really high hopes for this, to the point where I may even go see it in a theater, depending on where we are with the pandemic, at the end of May or June, when the series comes out at the end of May. So we'll see how things are going then. Knock on wood, they won't be so bad. But, new variants are already out there. So, I mean, I'm not making any assumptions. But in terms of Inu-Ou itself, I have pretty high expectations for it. I think it could be quite good. And that is spring 2022. Like I say, on the whole, both in the OVA theatrical and the TV side, there's certainly enough of interest here to make it a decent season. I suspect it'll be, in retrospect, a pretty good season. Most of the really, really big time stuff is still to come later in 22 and into 2023 with all these massive names we've seen. But there's enough here to make it a season worth reckoning. I would expect certainly it to be a step up from winter. But we'll see. As you know, I'll do my follow-up, my check-in post in about a month into the season. You'll see that on LIA. And of course, I'll be returning with more videos of various manga appreciation videos, Enzo Loves Manga, Anime from the Vault, whatever else strikes my fancy. And I hope you'll come back for those. As always, I thank you very much for tuning in. I thank you for listening. I thank you for watching. I thank you for reading. I would be extraordinarily grateful if you subscribe, if you hit the like button, if you leave your comments. I will happily reply to them. I love the communication, and as I say, I will leave the link to the in print version of this on LIA. I'll leave that in the description below. Thank you again. I hope you all have a wonderful spring, and I will leave you with the words of wisdom that I leave you with every time by all means, take no prisoners, no quarter asked, none given. You must stay frosty. Thanks a lot.